The sound began, a low guttural rumble that swelled into a distorted, almost human cry. It was unsettling, laced with an unnatural depth and resonance that pulsed through the speakers. The recording itself was crackly, clearly old, filled with the hiss and pop of analog tape. Yet the sound, raw and primal, pierced through the static with chilling clarity. It felt ancient, an echo from a time before words, before civilization. On the popular cryptozoology podcast, Dr. Alistair Finch's voice cut in, sharp and dismissive. He was a renowned figure in the field, known for his definitive pronouncements and an almost arrogant certainty. "And there you have it," he scoffed, his tone dripping with condescension. Another classic example of pareidolia, perhaps an owl, or a coyote, amplified and distorted, or more likely just some bored teenager with a megaphone in the woods. He chuckled, a smug, self-satisfied sound. "I've debunked countless recordings like this. People hear what they want to hear. It's animal mimicry, nothing more, a hoax." I listened from my lab, the sound waves still vibrating in the air around me. As a seasoned audio forensic expert, my job was to peel back the layers of sound, to find the truth hidden beneath the noise. Dr. Finch's words, intended to be definitive, didn't spark outrage in me. Instead, a quiet, almost imperceptible shift occurred, a subtle twitch at the corner of my eye, a tightening of my jaw. That sound, that impossible cry, triggered a deep, unsettling familiarity within me, not with its source, but with its very impossibility. It was a feeling I knew well, a strange resonance that defied easy explanation. Finch continued, his voice echoing through my lab. "The human mind loves a mystery, but these Bigfoot recordings are rarely anything more than wishful thinking or outright fabrication." He sounded so sure, so final, but I knew better. I had spent my life listening to the unheard, uncovering the hidden sonic signatures of the world. And this was different. This wasn't just a distorted animal sound. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze fixed on the flickering waveform on my screen. The sound had ended, leaving behind only the faint static of the old recording. I made a quiet internal vow, a promise whispered to myself in the quiet hum of my equipment. He thinks he's heard it all. He hasn't heard anything yet. This wasn't just about some mythical creature. It was about the arrogance of certainty, the danger of dismissing the unknown without truly listening. With a precise movement, I rewound the digital file, focusing on a specific segment. I amplified it, ran several noise reduction algorithms, and then, slowly, meticulously, isolated a barely audible frequency hidden beneath the main roar. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a faint undertone that shouldn't have been there. A hint of something ancient, something else was detected, a rhythmic pattern within the chaos. The screen faded to black, but the faint, haunting echo of that hidden frequency remained in my mind. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. My fascination with these kinds of sounds didn't begin in a sterile lab, but in the wild, untamed landscapes of my childhood. I grew up in a secluded, mountainous region, a place where the valleys were deep and the forests stretched for miles, ancient and dense, their canopy so thick that sunlight struggled to reach the forest floor. It was a place steeped in local folklore, whispers of unseen forest dwellers carried on the wind, stories told around crackling fires on cold nights. The terrain was isolating, a labyrinth of winding trails and hidden gorges, which fostered a tight-knit community, but also a profound sense of being apart from the rest of the world. Here, the line between reality and legend was often blurred. As a child, these woods were my playground, my classroom, and my mystery. I experienced things that adults quickly dismissed as childish imagination or the natural sounds of the wilderness. There were strange vocalizations echoing through the valleys, not quite animal, not quite human, that would send shivers down my spine. Fleeting shadows, darker than the deepest night, would dart across my peripheral vision, gone before I could properly focus. I felt an intuitive connection to that wilderness, a sense that it held secrets far older and stranger than anything written in books. Those experiences, those unexplained phenomena, weren't terrifying. They were captivating. They ignited a deep longing for understanding, a desire to peel back the layers of the known and peer into the unknown. I yearned to prove the existence of what others ignored, to validate those strange echoes and fleeting glimpses. That longing, that burning curiosity, became the driving force behind my career. It channeled me into the field of audio forensics, not just as a job, but as a quest. I wanted to scientifically validate what the adults of my childhood had so easily dismissed, to give voice to the voiceless, to bring the hidden sounds of the world into the light. I believed that if I listened closely enough, with the right tools and an open mind, I could unlock those secrets. Ironically, in those early years, Dr. Alistair Finch was a revered figure. His books on cryptozoology filled the shelves of our local library, his theories widely accepted as gospel by anyone interested in the subject. He was the authority, the one who seemingly held all the answers. As a young, aspiring expert, I initially admired Finch. I saw him as a potential mentor, someone who understood the allure of the unknown, someone who could guide me through the complexities of uncovering hidden truths. I devoured his writings, learning the scientific methodologies he espoused, unaware of the rigid skepticism that truly defined him, the closed-mindedness that would later become his most defining and frustrating characteristic. I thought he was a seeker of truth like me, just further along the path. This deep personal history, this lifelong pursuit fueled by childhood mysteries, formed the emotional foundation for the current conflict. My entire professional life has been a quiet, relentless pursuit of truth, often in the face of ridicule and dismissal. Finch, on the other hand, represents the established, dismissive authority, the gatekeeper of accepted knowledge. His recent pronouncement on that podcast wasn't just a scientific disagreement, it was a direct challenge to everything I believed, everything I had worked for. It was a public dismissal of the very sounds that shaped my life, the very mysteries that called me into this profession. This wasn't just about a recording, it was a deeply personal battle, a collision of two vastly different approaches to the unknown, one driven by an open heart, the other by a closed mind. That deeply personal history, those early inspirations, were also deeply intertwined with Dr. Finch's shadow. As my own research began to take shape, fueled by those childhood encounters and a burning desire to validate the unseen, Finch's pervasive influence became less an inspiration and more a suffocating presence. I remembered countless instances where his dismissive attitude directly impacted my early research, subtly undermining my efforts before they even had a chance to breathe. There was the time I presented a paper at a regional conference detailing anomalous audio patterns I'd meticulously extracted from remote wilderness recordings. Finch, then a guest speaker, had made a passing, almost imperceptible comment in his closing remarks, a seemingly innocuous jab about the enthusiasm of youth often outweighing empirical rigor. The audience chuckled, and suddenly, my carefully constructed findings felt trivialized, my credibility subtly eroded. I recalled other, more direct humiliations. A peer-reviewed journal, one I had poured months of work into for a submission, quietly rejected my paper after Finch published a broad critique of unsubstantiated auditory claims in a rival publication, seemingly without direct reference to my work, yet making it impossible for my findings to be taken seriously. His words created an intellectual minefield, making any venture into the unconventional feel like career suicide. He never directly attacked me, not in public anyway, but his shadow loomed large over the entire field. He had a way of subtly mocking methodologies, of raising an eyebrow at anything that deviated from his narrow definition of science in academic circles. It wasn't outright hostility, it was far more insidious, a slow, methodical chipping away at confidence and legitimacy. Finch's veiled manipulation extended beyond public comments. He controlled access, subtly influencing who received funding for what projects. I remembered applying for a grant to develop advanced spectral analysis tools, specifically designed for low-frequency, high-ambiguity audio data. Finch was on the review board. My application was rejected, the official reason being insufficient immediate applicability. Yet months later, I saw a similar, though less innovative project funded, led by one of Finch's former students, a project that conveniently steered clear of anything that might challenge established paradigms. He would offer advice, always delivered with a paternalistic smile that invariably steered me away from unconventional explanations, always pushing for more conventional interpretations, even when the data screamed otherwise. It was a constant battle against a current of subtle discouragement, a quiet pressure to conform. There were moments of profound injustice that still stung. I once shared preliminary findings about a complex recurring vocalization pattern I believed indicated intelligent communication, not mere animal sounds, with a colleague who was close to Finch. Weeks later, that colleague presented a paper at a symposium, attributing the discovery to a generic research team, and then, with a knowing look, thanked Dr. Finch for his invaluable guidance in interpreting the data. My genuine, groundbreaking discoveries were not just ignored, they were subtly appropriated, diluted, and then repackaged to fit Finch's acceptable narrative, or worse, attributed to his circle. This further solidified the intellectual and emotional chasm between us, turning my initial admiration into a simmering resentment. Each incident, each subtle slight, each dismissed finding, added another crack to my professional armor, hardening my resolve. His recent podcast incident, the one that had spurred me into action, wasn't an isolated event. It was the culmination of years of professional and personal disrespect, a public display of the very arrogance that had stifled my work for so long. Hearing him dismiss that recording, a sound that resonated with the deepest parts of my childhood and my life's work, with the same condescending certainty he had always employed, was the last straw. It wasn't just about a Bigfoot recording anymore. It was about finally challenging the intellectual gatekeeper who had consistently stood in the way of true, open-minded inquiry. It was time to expose his intellectual arrogance, not just for my own vindication, but for the sake of the truth itself, for all the sounds he had dismissed, all the mysteries he had refused to hear. My initial quiet resolve, that internal vow made in the lab, quickly transformed into an obsessive pursuit. The recording, once a mere audio file, became a puzzle box. Every frequency a potential clue, every crackle a whisper of something more. My audio forensics lab, usually a place of calm, methodical work, became a sanctuary, then a prison of sound. Hours blurred into days, the hum of equipment a constant companion. I pored over the waveforms, dissecting them, stretching them, filtering them, searching for the anomaly, the pattern, the undeniable proof that Finch had so carelessly dismissed. This intense focus, however, brought its own set of internal conflicts. Part of me, the part that had endured years of his subtle slights, yearned to confront Finch directly, to march into his office and present him with an unassailable truth. But another, more cautious part, the part that understood the intricate dance of academic politics, knew that emotional outbursts would only serve to reinforce his image of me as an unhinged outlier. I needed irrefutable evidence, something so profound, even Finch's carefully constructed skepticism couldn't dismantle it. The pressure to deliver this proof was immense, a heavy weight that settled on my shoulders, making each analysis session feel like a high-stakes gamble. As the initial podcast gained traction, Finch's dismissal of the recording solidified in the public consciousness. His supporters, a vocal legion of established academics and armchair cryptozoologists, rallied around his pronouncement, dismissing any counter-arguments as fringe theories or desperate attempts for attention. The social pressures began to mount. Colleagues, many of whom had once offered cautious encouragement for my more unconventional studies, now expressed skepticism, their glances tinged with pity or even ridicule. The whispers started, subtle at first, then growing louder, questioning my judgment, my methods, even my sanity. The academic community, always quick to conform to established narratives, began to view me as an outlier, someone who had strayed too far from the accepted path. Email invitations to conferences dwindled, and grant applications, once met with interest, now received curt rejections. It was a slow professional ostracization, a chilling effect meant to silence dissent. Finch, emboldened by this public support and the lack of credible challenge, became even more vocal and dismissive. He used his platform, not just the podcast, but various online forums and interviews, to publicly challenge anyone who dared to suggest the recording had merit. He painted them as deluded, as chasing phantoms, as undermining the very foundations of scientific inquiry. He skillfully leveraged his reputation, his years of published work, and his charismatic, albeit condescending, persona to further solidify his authority. His pronouncements felt like hammer blows, each one designed to crush any burgeoning doubt about his initial, definitive judgment. He wasn't just dismissing the recording, he was actively discrediting anyone who dared to question him, creating an intellectual wasteland where only his voice could be heard. The emotional suffocation became almost unbearable. I felt isolated, burdened by the weight of professional judgment, by the knowing glances and hushed conversations. The lab, once a haven, now felt like a lonely bunker, a place where I was fighting a war no one else believed was real. The pressure to prove Finch wrong, not just for personal vindication, but for the truth itself, for the integrity of scientific exploration, was immense. There were moments of despair, late nights spent staring at static-filled waveforms, wondering if I was chasing a ghost, if Finch was right after all. This was the nadir, the lowest point before any glimmer of hope could emerge. The silence of the night was often filled with the echoes of Finch's dismissive laughter, a constant reminder of the uphill battle I faced, a battle that seemed increasingly unwinnable in the face of such entrenched authority and widespread skepticism. The emotional suffocation became almost unbearable. I felt isolated, burdened by the weight of professional judgment, by the knowing glances and hushed conversations. The lab, once a haven, now felt like a lonely bunker, a place where I was fighting a war no one else believed was real. The pressure to prove Finch wrong, not just for personal vindication, but for the truth itself, for the integrity of scientific exploration, was immense. There were moments of despair, late nights spent staring at static-filled waveforms, wondering if I was chasing a ghost, if Finch was right after all. This was the nadir, the lowest point before any glimmer of hope could emerge. The silence of the night was often filled with the echoes of Finch's dismissive laughter, a constant reminder of the uphill battle I faced, a battle that seemed increasingly unwinnable in the face of such entrenched authority and widespread skepticism. But then, after countless hours of meticulous audio analysis, a turning point arrived. It was late, the fluorescent lights of the lab casting long, sterile shadows. My eyes were burning, my mind a fog of frequencies and decibels. I was working on a particularly stubborn segment, a fraction of a second, where the main vocalization seemed to waver, almost like a breath being taken. I'd run every filter, every algorithm I knew, pushing the software to its limits. Suddenly, a faint anomaly appeared on the spectrograph, a subtle ripple beneath the dominant frequencies, almost like a hidden current in a powerful river. It wasn't a crackle, not static, but a distinct, repeating pattern. I isolated it, amplifying the tiny sliver of sound, stripping away the layers of noise and distortion. What emerged was devastating. It wasn't just a single sound, but a complex, almost rhythmic pattern embedded within the supposed animal cry. It was subtle, barely audible without extreme processing, but undeniably there. As I listened, looping the isolated segment, the implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. This pattern, when isolated and amplified, revealed a structure that defied natural explanation. It was too complex, too deliberate, to be a random animal vocalization. There were variations, subtle shifts in pitch and timing that suggested intentionality. It contained elements that hinted at intelligence, perhaps even a rudimentary form of communication. It wasn't language as we understood it, but it was a structured series of sounds that couldn't be dismissed as a simple roar or growl. It was a message, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be found. Overwhelmed by the implications, by the sheer weight of what I had uncovered, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. Finch's condescending dismissal, his carefully cultivated image of authority, had to be challenged. I decided to take a drastic step, to reveal this discovery to the world, bypassing traditional academic channels that Finch so expertly controlled. I understood the risks, the potential for further ridicule, but the truth was too important. I couldn't let his narrative stand. This wasn't just about my vindication anymore. It was about opening a door that Finch had tried to nail shut. Simultaneously, Dr. Finch, perhaps hearing rumors through his network of my continued relentless investigation, became even more aggressive in his public statements. He'd publish articles, give interviews, and record short social media rants, publicly mocking my delusional pursuit. He'd use phrases like grasping at straws and desperate attempts for relevance, further cementing his own image as the rational voice against fringe theories. He seemed to relish the opportunity to belittle my efforts, perhaps sensing that I was close to something, even if he didn't know what it was. He was tightening his grip, attempting to preempt any challenge by discrediting me before I could even speak. But then an unforeseen opportunity presented itself. An independent, high-profile podcast, known for its investigative journalism and its willingness to tackle controversial subjects, reached out to me. They had heard about my persistent work on the recording, about the whispers of a potential breakthrough. They offered a platform, a chance to present my findings without censorship, without the filters of academic politics or Finch's influence. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the crack in the wall. This was the opportunity that shattered the cycle of suffering, the endless grind of lonely research, and shifted the narrative. It was my chance to finally speak, not just to Finch, but to everyone who had been told that some mysteries were simply not worth pursuing. The battle was about to go public, and I was ready. The immediate aftermath of that podcast offer brought a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. My heart hammered against my ribs, a drumbeat of anticipation and dread. Fear, because I was about to step into the glare of public scrutiny, to challenge a titan in his field. I knew the ridicule would be immense, the backlash from Finch's loyal followers swift and brutal, but the exhilaration was a powerful counterpoint, a surge of adrenaline at the prospect of finally exposing the truth, of laying bare the intricate patterns I had unearthed. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the jump was terrifying, but also the only way forward. A profound doubt surfaced, a cold wave washing over the initial rush of courage. The sheer enormity of challenging Dr. Alistair Finch, a figure of such established respect and influence, pressed down on me. What if I was wrong? What if, despite all the evidence, I had misinterpreted something crucial? The thought was paralyzing. I walked through my lab, touching the equipment, the screen still displaying the complex waveforms, and felt a sudden, explosive release. Years of suppressed frustration, of anger at Finch's dismissals, his subtle sabotage, his public mockery, all bubbled to the surface. I yelled, a guttural sound that tore through the quiet lab, echoing off the insulated walls. It wasn't a roar of triumph, but a cry born of exhaustion, of the relentless pressure, of the isolation. Tears, hot and unexpected, streamed down my face. It was a release, a purging of all the silent battles fought within these four walls. When it passed, a renewed determination settled in, a quiet, unshakable resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger than any one person's reputation. My closest colleague, Maria, who had initially been skeptical, dismissive of my obsession with the recording, became my staunchest ally during this time. She had seen the hours I poured into the analysis, witnessed the subtle shifts in my demeanor, and most importantly, she had listened to the isolated patterns. Her initial scientific skepticism had given way to a quiet awe. She would sit with me, late into the night, poring over the data, offering technical support, running cross-checks, and, most importantly, providing moral encouragement. "You've got something here," she'd say, her voice low but firm. "Something real. Don't let him intimidate you." Her belief was a lifeline. Conversely, some of my former mentors, respected figures in the academic community, began to distance themselves. Their calls became less frequent, their emails more formal. They subtly hinted at the controversial nature of my work, the potential professional repercussions of challenging Finch. It was a stark reminder of the subtle power dynamics within the scientific community, the way reputations could be made or broken by a single influential voice. Their cautious retreat, while disappointing, only strengthened my resolve. Back in my childhood community, the news of my impending public presentation spread like wildfire. The local community, which had always held a quiet, almost inherent belief in the unseen forest dwellers, responded with a mix of cautious optimism and a deep sense of vindication. Old-timers, who had whispered tales of strange sounds in the woods for generations, nodded knowingly. They saw my work not as a scientific anomaly, but as a validation of their own lived experiences, their folklore. Letters and messages poured in, not of academic critique, but of shared stories of encouragement, of a collective hope that their truths would finally be heard. It was a powerful reminder of the roots of my own curiosity, the very reason I had embarked on this path. The profound psychological impact of this impending disclosure was immense. I felt the weight of the world's attention settling on my shoulders. The investigation was no longer just about personal vindication, about proving Finch wrong. It had evolved into something far greater. It was about the broader implications for science itself, for our understanding of the unknown, for the very boundaries of what we considered possible. The nights were restless, filled with scenarios of public debate, of scientific scrutiny, of the potential for both triumph and utter failure. The psychological toll was heavy, a constant hum of anxiety beneath the surface. But beneath that anxiety, deeper and more insistent, was an unshakable conviction. I had found something real, something that demanded to be heard, and I was ready to be its voice. The day of the podcast broadcast arrived, a culmination of years of quiet dedication and intense recent effort. My presentation of the analyzed recording, complete with visual spectrograms and isolated audio tracks, went viral almost instantly. The public, starved for genuine mystery and something beyond the mundane, was captivated. The undeniable evidence of complex, non-human communication, a rhythmic pattern embedded within what was once dismissed as a mere animal cry, resonated deeply. The internet exploded with discussions, theories, and awe. Scientific experts, initially hesitant and skeptical, began to re-examine their long-held beliefs. The audio patterns I presented were too intricate, too deliberate to be random. They suggested a level of organization that defied conventional biological explanations. Conferences quickly scheduled emergency panels, and peer-reviewed journals scrambled to secure submissions on the implications of these findings. It was a seismic shift, a crack in the bedrock of established scientific thought. Dr. Finch's carefully constructed reputation, once an impenetrable fortress of academic authority, began to crumble under the weight of this new evidence. His initial condescending dismissal of the recording, broadcast to millions, now played like a self-indicting prophecy. His subsequent aggressive denials, his public mockery of my delusional pursuit, were exposed for what they truly were: intellectual arrogance and a desperate attempt to maintain control over a narrative he could no longer dictate. The very platforms he had used to discredit me now amplified his downfall. Social media, once his echo chamber, turned into a torrent of criticism. Academic institutions sensitive to public perception and the undeniable scientific merit of the discovery began to distance themselves. Invitations to speak dwindled, research grants became harder to secure, and his books, once bestsellers, saw a sharp decline in sales. He issued a series of carefully worded public apologies, each one sounding hollower than the last, but the damage was irreversible. His academic credibility was severely damaged, leading to a significant and very public loss of influence. The Titan had fallen, not with a roar but with a whimper of intellectual defeat. While the recording didn't definitively prove Bigfoot in the traditional sensationalized sense, it opened up a new, thrilling frontier. It wasn't about a fuzzy photo or a footprint anymore. It was about sound, about communication, about the very possibility of unknown species possessing complex vocalizations. This new field, which some quickly dubbed cryptoacoustics, suddenly had a pioneer. I found myself thrust into the spotlight, not as a fringe enthusiast, but as a leading figure, guiding discussions, proposing new methodologies, and fostering an environment of open-minded inquiry. The journey had been arduous, fraught with doubt and professional isolation, but the resolution was profoundly satisfying and, more importantly, realistic. It wasn't a sudden, fantastical reveal of a creature, but a methodical scientific expansion of our understanding of the natural world. Reflecting on the entire journey, from those childhood whispers in the mountains to the global resonance of a single enigmatic sound, I understood that truth often lies just beyond the comfortable confines of conventional understanding. True scientific inquiry, I realized, requires not just rigorous methodology, but also a profound sense of humility and an unyielding, open mind. It demands the courage to challenge established norms, to listen to the faint signals that others dismiss as noise, and to pursue questions that might seem outlandish to the complacent. The universe, I firmly believe, still holds countless mysteries, vast and intricate, waiting to be unveiled. And sometimes, the most profound truths are hidden in plain sight, embedded within the very fabric of our world, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to truly listen, to disregard the dismissive voices, and to allow the unseen to finally be heard. My work had just begun,